Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift Podcast. I am here with Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hey, hey.
Thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift Podcast. We've been talking for a couple minutes before recording, and I was just kind of sharing the show exists because of my own personal experience. And, you know, the Life Shift was when I was 8 years old, my life shift happened. And then I naively thought like that was my only time in my life that things had happened like that, where from one moment to the next, everything was different. When I was 8, my mom was killed in an accident. And at the time, my parents lived states apart. I lived with my mom full time. And from that moment until probably like 30 something years old, I felt very alone in that experience. I didn't find therapy in time. I just felt like I was navigating this world alone. And when I started the show, I wanted to talk to people about these moments. And so other people listening out there didn't feel alone in those circumstances. And so now I've got to talk to 150 plus people about their moments. And hopefully all these people listening are like, oh, wow, I can do it, or I can move through, or I'm inspired, or whatever they do when they're listening. So thank you for just wanting to be a part of this.
Yeah, honored to be here, man. And here to serve. You know, hopefully my story, my life can somehow, you know, spark some kind of flame in somebody and help give them some inspiration and maybe some clarity on what their next step might look like.
I think it will. I think what I have learned is that there's a little piece of everybody's story that can resonate with someone. Like, even if it's not the main pivotal part of it, but it's like something that you're going to say, or something like a way that you phrase something that for the first time triggers something in someone to kind of move forward. And, you know, I think that's the power of story, the power of being vulnerable and just being human, which we were born in the same year, which I'm giving away your age now. But I think growing up for me, I didn't feel like I was allowed to be vulnerable or to share certain things. I don't know if you felt the same way, if society was telling you you had to be a certain way. Did you have any of those experiences?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was mainly raised by my mom. My parents were divorced, and, you know, I was in a sports culture. I was an athlete, so I was pretty much all the teams and stuff. And so I would say I'm in touch. I'm a dad of 4 girls and I have 1 son, but there's a lot of emotions that are in my house. So I got to be kind of tapped into all that. So I think now at the age of 43, I'm there. But I think when I was younger, you know, seeing a lot of the divorce and things, I wasn't definitely as in tune with what was going on inside of me at the time. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine that your kids are probably experiencing more of that quote unquote freedom in the world to kind of feel the way they need to. So I'm just curious. I think that part of my growth essentially was through struggle of like not being able to process those feelings and not being able to share them or tell my dad, hey, things aren't great, because I just assumed that he wanted me to feel great and those kind of things. So then perfectionism came in and all these other pieces. And then finally at 30, I was like, oh, I don't have to do any of that. I can shed whatever I need to and just like be a human and be flawed, and all the pieces are okay.
Yeah, that's good. Love it.
So before we get into your story, maybe you can tell us a little bit about who Chris is in 2024.
Yeah, in 2024, I'm a husband. I'm a beautiful wife of 20 years. We just hit our 20-year wedding anniversary. We got 5 amazing kids. Just sent our first one off to college, which is our son. He's 19. We got girls all the way down to 7 years old. I have lived a Forrest Gump type life when it comes to careers and different things, which we can talk about in a little bit. But today, I do a couple things. I've written a couple books with my wife, one called The Rhythm of Us. It's about 5 rhythms of a thriving marriage, and another one called The Rhythm of Home, which just released not that long ago. We have a podcast called The Rhythm of Us. And then I also am an angel investor. So I find startups, invest in startups, and I have a whole newsletter of people that follow me in the world of startups.
That's awesome. And I love the Forrest Gump like analogy of your life of like just jumping around. Was that something because you were trying to find something that fit or felt right? Or was it just you were just interested in so many different things?
You know, I mean, I think if we're going into the story a little bit, I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and I you know, played all the sports, did all the stuff, but it was clear that the fishbowl that I had been dealt was way smaller than the personality that God had kind of put in me. And I didn't really know. It always kind of played itself out as like, what is wrong with you, dude? Just chill out, you know? But it was like, I always was like, I want to change the world. I want to be famous, whatever it was, you know, all those things in it. And so I, you know, God bless my little town of Eltsville, Indiana. But one of the best things I ever did was leave it. And I think on that journey, there was a whole world that I had no clue was out there. And so I went to discover, and I was curious. And I think forever, I was a little fearful of like, well, this is the thing you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so I probably at times self-sabotaged and was like, I'm going to go do this now. And I'm going to do this. Cause it was like, well, that's scary to say that this is your forever career or whatever. So I've just done a bunch of things, and what's cool is it's all worked itself out to where it helps me with the things that I'm doing today.
Yeah. Well, you said you were fearful of getting stuck in there, but it doesn't sound like did you have any fear in those jumps? Like, was it, or were you just like, I can do this, like confidence kind of that came with those things?
Yeah, I was.
I would be afraid to fail. That's why I asked that.
Well, that's the interesting part is like I had a gift of a 5-foot tall mom who just made me believe that anything was possible. She was just like, you can do anything. Well, which is not true. I was never going to play in the NFL. There was certain things that I'm never going to Broadway, you know, like, but in my mind, I was like, if I went, you know, and so that there was like kind of a blind confidence that happened which landed in failure quite a few times. And also, but it also really gave me like where I think people were like, so I've had friends recently. I had a friend recently tell me, he's like, Chris, I would call you a courage lender. Like you lend courage to someone who doesn't have the courage to take the first bold step. And so for me, for whatever reason, the DNA that's been put inside of me, I just cannot stand by when someone is living a life that they shouldn't be living and they have a dream and they're not taking a jump. And so, you know, one of the first ones for me was I grew up in this small town and there wasn't much of an exit plan. The exit was you go work somewhere, local factory or whatever, or you go to college, and typically you came back and you got a job somewhere close by. But neither one of those boxes really worked out well for me. I tried the college thing, that didn't work. And then for me, I looked up and you're a product of the same generation I am, and I saw MTV, and it was like there was the reality shows back before reality TV was what it was. And so there was the Real World and there was the Road Rules shows, and I was like, I'm going to go be on Road Rules. And I went to an open casting call one day and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, today your life changes forever. And I went to that open casting call, and the journey basically led me to where I ended up as a cast member on MTV's Road Rules South Pacific.
That's fascinating. Also, just as a little side note, I wanted to be on MTV when I was in college. Like, it was like, I want Carson Daly's job. Like, I just want to be on TRL and just
100%.
Talk about music videos.
100%.
But you did it. But I was like,
it's funny you say that. It's like, I told people,
no.
I told my wife like a couple years ago, I was like, babe, like, I think one of the things I'm supposed to do is to be a host. And you think about Carson and Seacrest and, you know, Larry Kings and all these people that just are so good at navigating what we're doing right here. And I've gotten to realize that on, you know, stages across the country and podcasts and different things of that nature. But it is. Yeah, no, but for me back then, it wasn't necessarily Carson. It was Real World and Road Rules. Like that's what I wanted to do. And so I ended up on Road Rules as a cast member.
I mean, talk about a life shift. Was that a life shift for you, going from this small town to like television, like on millions of people's television every night, or not every night, but every week?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. You know, especially like you have no clue. You're just running around with some cameras in your face and you're just like, this is fun. But you know that something is going to shift or something's going to change. But it gets really interesting when you're walking down the street of New York City or Iowa and a street you've never been on in your life. And they're like, hey, Chris. You're like, oh, hey, what's up?
Do I know
and
you?
so it was, I mean, gosh, what a gift. I was 22 years old. I got to travel the globe. I got to go on TV. I did one of the challenges. I did Battle of the Sexes too. And so like, it was great. In my early 20s, it was super awesome. Like it was one of those things that you go, only a small fraction of those who've dreamt of this moment get it. And I got it. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially for that age that you were, I mean, it just feels like so like I'm sure it was work, but also it must feel like somewhat of a vacation in some way because you get to like do fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Easiest, most enjoyable thing I've ever, I mean, it's like, this is not work. Are you kidding me? You're gonna like,
Right.
I got food paid for. I got lodging. We're all in our, young 20s, teens, looking great, having fun. I mean, it was like, there was no hard life about it. That's for
Right.
sure.
But also not a job you can get. It doesn't feel like you could do that forever, right? Like that's something where it's almost safe in that mindset of that younger version of you where you were like, I'm going to get stuck in this. It's like, well, can I get stuck in this?
Yeah. I mean, there are some that have successfully found themselves stuck in this for a long time. And
Yeah.
but it just, for me, it wasn't, I just knew it wasn't. I was like, I'm going to capitalize on my little 15 seconds here. And then, pretty quickly thereafter, I got married and had kids. And so it was like, okay, that you're not going back on an MTV challenge now.
Yeah.
So, which is fine. It was
Yeah.
great while it lasted. I closed that chapter and am forever thankful for it.
Would you consider that chapter or closing that chapter as any kind of like major shift in who you were? Did that define you or did you feel lost? Did you feel like, okay, on to the next adventure, whether that's Family Man or how you move through life?
I think for me, the bigger shift came 6 months before I ended up on the show.
Okay.
Actually. And that defined me and defines who I am even to this day. It gives me the filter for who I am. For me, I grew up, like I said, in Indiana, but saw a lot of divorce, saw a lot of really rough things. 4 dads, 3 moms as a kid, just wasn't great. And just constantly just searching for who I was and searching in all the wrong places. I got to the party scene and all that jazz because, it was fun for the moment and for the time. And I just kind of come to the end of myself, and I'll never forget. It was October 13th, 2002. And I was in downtown Nashville. And now, if anybody's been to Nashville recently, it's not the Nashville that you know today. Broadway was a ghost town. It was a Sunday night. There was nobody down there. And I just remember the concrete block I stood on, and I was having just this internal conversation with God. And I just said, "Hey, I'm done. Like, I'm tired. I'm broken. I'm empty. I'm hurting. Like, I can't do this anymore." And I just said, "Hey, if you are who you say you are, I'm gonna give you my life here, and I'm gonna stop doing this stuff, and I want to live for you, and I don't want to live for me anymore." And I did, and radically my life changed forever. It wasn't in some big service. It was just me and him on a concrete block. And I mean, I have a big poster on my wall, or a picture right here on my wall of that very spot where it happened. And honestly, that's where my life changed forever. So I stopped dating, I stopped drinking, I stopped doing all that stuff. It was just like this crazy transformational moment. And
Wow.
and that was the catalyst. So that when I went on the show, I wasn't the partier on the show. I was that guy 6 months prior to the show, but I got to go and kind of relate to where those people were, but not from a judgmental perspective, just more of like hey, I've been where you are, and I'm here if you need me, and I'm going to be your friend. And yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. It was really neat.
Did you grow up with any kind of connection to religion or spiritual
Yeah, I mean,
practices?
I was in my mom had us go to church here and there, but and I would have checked a box in my head to go, I'm like, yeah, I align with this. This is what but it was more of like, it was more of a get out of hell card is the way we had to explain it. Right. It was like, just one day I'll get there, but it wasn't a hard thing. It wasn't a true relationship thing, like right. where I met him and I knew him.
Yeah.
And he knew me, and I could feel his love. Like I had never experienced that. No.
what was like so significant about that moment and where you felt the need to reach out, if you will, or to have that conversation? Because I mean, it sounds like you're. Was there anything that like triggered it, or was it just divine intervention in a way?
Yeah, no, I mean it had been, I think for anybody listening here, they're gonna know, like, when you keep chasing after stuff and you keep trying to find that thing, like, what is it? And it's broken relationships, perhaps it's substance abuse, perhaps it's workaholism, whatever the thing, even maybe it's just you, whatever it is, like, and you just go, this isn't working. And for me, I had a really rough weekend where I had, seen an ex and gotten way more intoxicated than I should. And you just got down. You're just like, what, like, for what? Like, what am I doing? And then you just start like questioning like all your choices. And you're going like, this road is, I can play this movie out. This is something my wife and I talk about all the time. You gotta play the movie out. Like, what is the end of this movie going to look like? And luckily enough, I was able to kind of look down around the corner and go, I don't like where this road is taking me. And I know that on my own, I'm not going to be able to do, this is not a good plan at all. And so that's when I said, okay, I can't do this. I need you. And everything changed.
Do you feel that, because I mean that I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people kind of hit this moment and then they have this conversation and then they feel maybe more purpose driven or more connected in some way. Was it like an overnight kind of, or like in that moment feeling in which you were like, now you have a handle on this? Or was there like this transitionary period of like dipping your toe in there and kind of moving forward? Because I feel like some people might just be flip of a switch and then other people finding their way there.
Yeah, I am probably like a lot of people listening here. Like, I'm an all in kind of guy.
Okay.
If I'm partying, I was all in. If I was, whatever it was, and because I just knew myself that if I kind of went halfway, I'd end up right back where I was. And so that day I had made a decision and I didn't even fully know what that meant. I wasn't even thinking like, oh, well, that means that all of these rules or whatever will come along with it. That wasn't like, who cared about all that? It was just like, I am tired. I am broken. I am empty. I am hurting and I need you. I can no longer play the role of God. Like, this is not working here because I don't have the tools or the ability to be omnipresent, omniscient, and do, I am human, I'm broken, I'm fallible, and I have to acknowledge that. And I need you. And I'm here. And so in that moment, I had made the decision. Yeah, this is who I am. And this is what I'm doing. Was there a journey to form new habits, create new thought processes, break off bad relationships? Yeah, that did not happen. I mean, that was a journey for sure, but there was no doubt about it that I can point back to October 13, 2002 when that happened. There's no doubt about it. That was the night. That was the moment. Everything changed.
Yeah. Curious how, I mean, I think other people have had these like wake up one morning and I know things are going to be different because I've relinquished control over this, or I've decided I'm never going to do this. And it's like hard to explain because it's just like, that's how it happens. But also it's important to, I mean, maybe you could share a little bit about what are some of the things that you had to intentionally do to become this version of you, or to, as you said, like kind of what drives all your decision making now in the way that you kind of exist in the world, right? Is building that version of you up and those belief systems.
Yeah, for sure. I think, first I had to do a lot of learning. One, I had to go, okay, this is who I am and this is what I believe. Like, I need to understand and surround myself with people who are wiser and smarter and older than me, and people who, are operate in this faith. I love Jesus. I'm following Jesus. Like, what does Jesus teach? Who is Jesus? How did he serve? How did he love? How can I become that to the world around me? And what does that mean? What does that mean for the husband that I want to be someday? I wasn't married or anything. What kind of dad do I want to be? And then also too, there was a process of healing that had to come too. I mean, I wasn't just, you're not just drinking and sleeping around because it's fun.
Right.
There's a hole there. There's something there. And so that you have to unwind some of the wounds that are wide open and need healing. So you need time, you need to breathe, you need to forgive yourself or anybody else that maybe hurts you so that you can be the best version of yourself, And so there was a whole process of walking through going, what is right? What is wrong? Who, like what was wrong in what I did? What was wrong in what others did to me, And so, and just finding peace to where, here I am years later, and I try and tell people there really came a moment. I was probably like late 30s, early 40s, where I realized like I no longer have anything to prove to anyone. I don't have to get the approval of my dad. I don't need the approval of like anybody else. Like my wife loves me. My kids know that I love them and they love me, and I'm able to provide for my family. And on the other side of that, like I no longer had a drive to want to be famous or what, because even in the early days of reality TV, what I mean, yeah, being on MTV is great, but there's something behind that as well. Like there's probably a healthy side to where God says, hey, here's a microphone, you're gifted at a couple things, I can put you in these places. Like we talked about the Carson Dailies. I mean, that's a gift, that's a talent, it's a gift that man has. And I know people go like, what? It's like try it. Like it's not an easy thing. All I have to say is like it's a journey no matter where you are. But for me, like I again played the movie of who I wanted to be and realized there was some real work that I had to do to grow. And it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's a growth isn't ever, it's always happening. It's ever changing. And you're always changing. You're never done growing as long as you're breathing. And so, but yeah, there was some heavy lifting and some boulders that had to be kind of blown up there at the very beginning to kind of get my heart and mind and get my posture right. Because if I was going to get married or if I was going to have kids, there was like definitely some like, okay, I don't need these things in my life. I want to be clean of that. And I want to do a relationship for the first time right ever when I find my bride. And so there were some decisions that had to be made and some character things in me that had to be worked out before I was ready for those next big chapters of life.
Yeah. Well, also, and then if you plan to have kids, you don't want to pass any things that inevitably get passed down. So try to make them as good as possible so that you can pass those down to your kids in a good way. Curious 100%. About the religion piece. And I don't know if this question is going to come off in a way that I want it to, but you said that you had to do like some like research and connection and those kind of things. And you wanted to figure out like if you're following Jesus in this way, did you know like which area of religion you wanted to go in, if you will? Did you discover that along the way? Like maybe you were this and then you switched a little bit to this in your journey? Or is that I don't know how that works because I'm not myself too spiritual, but curious if that was part of your journey too, figuring out where your faith fell into maybe a bucket.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously I had some context as a kid growing up, but when that moment came, like there was just no denying for me that it was Jesus. And that I could like know him, experience him, feel him, like his presence. It was just calling on his name and being transformed by him. And then, then the more you read of who he was and what he did on this earth, I think sometimes he can get a bad rap for the way people portray him. But man, he was love and grace and humility and strength all at the same time. And while at the same time, coming from that background, it's fully man and fully God. He's powerful. And so it was, for me, it was like, there was just no denying that was who I was going to serve and give my life to.
Yeah. I don't know what made me ask that question. I think because I know that there are a lot of like branches of Christianity and some people feel certain ways, and then are you more, do you find yourself more spiritual or more assigned to a particular book, if you will,
Oh, well, I mean,
of
the only
rules?
yeah, no, it's good. It's a good question. I think so. There's a lot of, for anybody listening here that maybe doesn't have context, there's a lot of what they call denominations inside of the Christian church, and there's a lot of little nuances for each one of those. These do this and those don't do that, and vice versa or whatever. I think because I didn't necessarily know the rules, like
Right.
my wife grew up in church, right? She came from very clear denomination, and this is what they do, and they were labeled and all the things or whatever. And she's like, there's probably a little bit more of a freedom for me because I didn't know those rules. And what I did know was Jesus, and I read his word because I read his Bible, I read the scriptures, and I read what he said, and I watched what he did. And that's where I fell in love. I didn't fall in love with a denomination or a particular set of rules. I fell in love with him and who he was and who he calls me to be.
Right.
And that's where I am, like, above him. Yeah, I'm a Christ follower. I love Jesus. That's it. I mean, I don't have any kind of stamp from some kind of denomination.
Right. Well, and nor do you need one. I'm just curious because I think if someone in your circumstance comes to this experience in that way, and it wasn't necessarily like I was born into it and I just kind of go through the motions, like this gives you a true calling, feeling, immersion into whatever you want. It's not like, oh, well, I have to go this way. Like I feels like it gives you a little bit more freedom and a little bit more sense of really attaching yourself to something meaningful to you specifically, and not because we grew up in it or whatever it may be. Like I grew up going to Catholic church, and it was just like, why am I standing? Why am I sitting? Why am I, like it was a lot of those motions where I didn't really feel it, but it sounds like you were able to find a space where everything was meaningful to you in a way that you wanted it to be meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, all I can say is I fell in love and met the creator of the universe, and he loved me and he changed me and he forgave me. And that was the part for me. It's just like, I was a pretty broken person who'd done a lot of really bad things, I mean, it's all relative, but I wasn't a beaking, shining light of morality, and I just knew that I was broken, and I was like, hey, but what was nice is what his word tells me that he loved me, even in that moment, even in the midst of my selfish, stupid decisions. He was like, I'm right here. So when you're ready, like, I'm going to welcome you, even with all, you don't have to go get cleaned up and then come to me. Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, heavy burden, like who are weary, and I'll give you rest. And he did. And for that, I owe him everything.
Right. Does that help you forgive yourself too? Or is that a longer road?
Yeah, for sure. I
not to say that you have anything that you need to forgive yourself, but
no, I mean, I don't necessarily, I think going back to what I talked about, sometimes, some people deal pretty deeply with shame, like shame's a thing, and it's a real thing for a lot of people. I think for the longest time, like, I had to go the opposite and really acknowledge, going back to that confidence thing we talked about, I could do anything, and so I think I had a false sense of, security, which played itself on times as arrogance or whatever. And so, like, I had to watch. So, like, I'm not really hard on myself, but growing in all this made me realize, like, hey, you need to be really cognizant of how you're treating the world around you, and really be acknowledged and ready to humble yourself if you did mess up or if you have. And so, I don't know, I'm a real futurist. Like, I like to live in the future. My wife is nostalgic. She likes to look back, but one of the things we try to do is really, truly, like, live in the present and acknowledge, like, what happened today, how was today, like, where's our family right now? Are we busy? Are we in a good sweet spot? Like, how's our marriage? And so, all that to say is, like, if I get into a spot where it's like, oh man, I've been a little selfish, or I've been focused on whatever, I've been giving too much to work and not enough to my family, then yeah, I need to go make amends to her, my kids, God, myself, and then make sure that I'm growing and not finding myself there the next
Yeah.
day.
It gives you probably a better awareness too of all the things and the things to be maybe the things to be aware of and to make sure that you're acknowledging and being okay with. And it also does it give you the ability to make mistakes and be okay with making those mistakes as long as you learn from and move forward. Because I'm sure, I mean, maybe you are perfect, but most of us aren't. You know, so when you do make mistakes, do you have this more freedom and awareness to move through it as a learning experience?
Yeah, I think what's nice is anything that I do, hopefully the goal is, the older you get, like that my motive, it all comes down to my motive. And if I can, if I mess up, but like I was trying to do something good, then it's like, okay, well, that's a bummer. I'm sorry that happened. I can own it. I can apologize. I can learn from it, but you always got to just see, like, is there something that is ill motive, like something that's driving the ship that I'm maybe blind to, that I don't understand, that I got to go get some healing on. I got to go find what's going on there. And so if I can be self-aware enough and be honest with myself enough, then if my motive is wrong, then I'm gonna have to check that and really repent there. But if like I'm trying to do something good and I'm like, shoot, I messed up or whatever, I was going too fast or whatever, then I'm not as hard on myself because like I know my motive was good. But if my motive's bad and I failed, then I'm gonna feel that a little bit more and really try and be remorseful and fix it so it doesn't happen again.
Do you attribute a lot of that to your faith, or is that more of a character not related to?
I think I live my life in a way that I hope I live my life in a way. I try to live my life in a way that like I'm going to have to one day sit down. You would talk about bringing tears. I'm going to sit down across from Jesus and we're going to talk about my life, the life that I lived, the one life that he gave me. And I'm going to have to give an account for that. I'm going to have to give account the way I spoke to my wife when no one was looking, the way I treated my daughters, set the example of what a man looks like for them, who I was when no one else was around.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I think about our secret life, throughout scriptures, there's different verses that talk about the secret life, that our secret life will be brought to life and brought to light. And I don't want to have a secret life that anybody in the world can't see, outside of maybe a secret life of serving and giving that I don't tell the world that it happens.
Right.
That if I'm going to bless somebody, you're not done that. You're not doing it on a pedestal out in front of the world. You're doing it you're not letting your left hand know what your right hand's doing, because it's not about self praise or whatever. And so, so for me, I think one day I'm going to have to give an account, and I take that just really serious and try as best I can to live out the life that I can be proud of that moment someday.
Yeah. Do you feel that do you think it's a challenge in today's society, where I feel like a lot of people in society are quite performative in a sense of like, there is probably a secret life of things. And then there's this performance essentially that they're showing to the world because they expect the world wants this of them. Do you find it hard to live in your truth and all those pieces with some of the performative nature of society around you, or no skin off your back kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think the younger me really, really struggled with it. I think,
Well, that was your job. You were
it was, it's true. But, but now it's like, okay, so I live in a town I live in Franklin, Tennessee. There's a lot of influencers here and authors and entrepreneurs and a lot of that stuff. So like, so for me, like when I'm like looking for a group of friends, I just want somebody who's an accountant and like, they're not trying to write a book or build a thing, they're just trying to do their job and love their family well. And so, so I think for me, I don't know. I I'm not an old curmudgeon. It's like, oh man, people these days. It's just like, I understand what social media is, but I understand
Right.
the dangers of it. And so that's why I really don't post on social media, you know, like, and I think the unfortunate thing about our life and world is like the people that we probably want to hear from the most, the people that have the most wisdom, the ones that we could sit at their feet and go, oh my gosh, that's so good.
Right.
They probably don't have a social media account. And they're the ones that we really want to hear from, but they're just busy about doing the work in their town or in their community. And I'm not saying that everybody who has a voice and has a book and has an influence and has an audience isn't doing good, because there's definitely some of that. But I think for me, like I said, when I hit that moment where I had nothing left to prove, that's when ultimate peace came to me. Because I think sometimes we're trying to prove to who knows who, maybe our younger self or a parent in the back of our head or whatever it is, you know? And so it's like, if we can just have ultimate freedom there to go like, I'm not going to be perfect and that's okay, but I'm going to give it a damn good shot here. I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
And so that's, anyway, I don't know if I fully answered your question, but that's where I sit.
Yeah. I mean, part of me thinks, you know, if you have, I don't want to say the answers, but if you have the way that you feel is working in your life, things feel good, you're living in your purpose and all the, you know, I could imagine there could be, I don't know if there is, but a pull to want to help others get to how you feel. And then, and, you know, kind of thinking of all those people that are out there, you're like, it would stress me out that I wouldn't be able to help them all.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those feelings, or is that just not part? You don't. It's not your job to help them. They need to kind of find their space.
My favorite thing to do, and this happens quite a bit, and I do wrestle. This is a wrestle that I have. Is that when someone calls me, usually I'll get a guy that calls me. Maybe he's a guy that I haven't talked to in 5 years, and he's just like, "Hey man, can we talk?" I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's got something going on in his life. Either he made a poor decision or he's wrestling with something or whatever, and he just needs somebody to talk to. Those are some of my favorite conversations. Because like I said, the only people they're going to hear are me, him, and God. Like, you know, I'm not recording it. I'm not putting it on social. I'm not doing any of that stuff. And so, you know, I once had a guy go, man, Chris, like you have so many of these conversations. Like you should really start charging people to like coach them or whatever. And I was like, man, if I started charging people, it loses its mystique and it's like power that's there where you're just like, hey, I just want to serve you and I'm going to serve you and no one's ever going to know about it except for you and me and whoever else you decide to share it with. And so that's cool. But I do wrestle, like I said, I mean, I shared a little bit off the jump of the call. Like, you know, one of the big shifts I did in my life was I left my full-time job at 37 years old with 5 kids. I mean, like if there is a dad out there close to that age with kids and a wife and a mortgage and whatever, like literally their heart just fell out of their chest. It's like
that's a leap.
You did what?
Yeah.
And so, but I've taken a lot of jumps in my life and some of them were stupid, but you learned. And, you know, luckily I have a bride who's down for the adventure and she's seen me win enough to go, okay, we can take the next leap because you've won enough here that maybe you could do it again over there. And, you know, you grow from it. Hopefully you grow and you learn.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I want to help. I just wrestle with how does that scale?
How does it scale, but also how does it stay true? How does it stay, you know, in a place that serves you in an effective way too? Because I think we're also taught to like, you should monetize, like you said, you should monetize all these things. And you're like, but that's going to take away from the value that you get as someone that's listening and offering an ear. Sometimes people just need someone to listen to them because no one else is listening, right? Or they think no one else is listening, I should probably say.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's one of the coolest things that God gave me years ago, and maybe it wasn't even me, so maybe I heard it from somebody else or whatever, but one of the greatest questions I love to ask people who are wrestling with something, and this may be helpful for your audience, is I like to kind of, they go, hey, and they'll come to me and they go, I'm dealing with this, 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 and this. And this is the situation. And they'll paint it out. They'll paint the scenario. It's a job. It's whatever it is. So should we move? Whatever it is. And it's, if they have a kid, I'm like, how old's your kid? They're like 5, 7, 15, whatever. Okay. Well, let's just to say that in 20 or 30 years, your kid comes to you and they go, Dad, I need your help. I'm really struggling. And they paint the entire picture, like verbatim of your scenario. And then they look at you and they say, Dad, what should I do? Instantaneously, people know what they would tell their kid. What they would tell their kid, not what they would tell themselves, what they would tell their kid. And then I just look at them and go, well, then you know what you need to do. Yeah. And it's just like light bulbs and like clarity, and sometimes just being framed, just stepping out of it just briefly to be able to look at it with like, because what does somebody want for their kid? They want nothing but the best for their kid. They want their kid to like be thriving and have the best life. And they don't want them to be in any pain or whatever. And so that was one of those pieces that I shared with the guy one time, and I've gotten to share that with so many people. And I was talking to a guy a week ago. He's talking about a business deal, and I was like, well, his daughter was sitting right there at dinner, and I said, what would you tell her? And he's like, I tell her to run. I was like, well, then run. Well, you better run, bro. You better start running.
Is that why you chose to be an angel investor? Because it's a little bit not as maybe as flashy as a venture capitalist or someone, like, is there a reason that you went that route?
Yeah, I think, for me, man, I love to just, I'm a creator, I'm a visionary, I'm a futurist, like I said, and startups, it doesn't get much more of all of that baked into one.
Right. And people are excited too.
Oh, it's exciting. It's like, this could change the world or it could completely flop. And so there's some of that in there. Right. And so for me, what I do is, like I said, I come from small town Indiana. Like, I have a newsletter of people that I bring along with me. Like, they subscribe and I go find these deals and I invest in them, and then they invest right alongside me. And so for venture capitalism,
nice.
That is very much for the wealthy and the elite. Like, it is not for the everyday investor. But for me, I'm trying to go find the deals that are great deals that I can invest in, and that other everyday investors can invest alongside me, so that when the story is told, when the IPO happens or the exit or the big returns, that it's not just another fat cat VC getting fatter. Right. It's for the people. And so that's kind of trying to be, nice, I guess I'm trying to be Robin Hood for the people, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like this grassroots kind of thing, like with the leader running, you're finding the things, you're helping people, but you're also helping those that want to help others, but can't in quote unquote big ways. Right.
Right.
Or big financial ways.
Right. For sure.
But being able to be a part of your circle essentially allows them to contribute to the greater good in whatever capacity they can.
Yeah. I mean, that's the deal, is like, what's cool is like, I try to find deals that have low minimums for people to invest in. So like, there was a legislation that passed in 2016 called the Jobs Act that made it possible now, for the first time since the Great Depression, for everybody to invest in startups, anybody 18 years or older. So when I find startups, I make sure that both accredited and non-accredited people can invest in these deals, sometimes for as little as a couple $100. And that's what I'm on the hunt, man. I'm just on the hunt, trying to find great deals, great founders, great stories that are ultimately trying, because I mean, VC has been in control for the longest time. And I think there is a big shift happening in the world of startups, that I think they're going, I don't want to give up a board seat and give all of my company away. I want to bring the people in here, and I want them to have, one, they become brand ambassadors, and two, I don't have to give up half of my company. I can still give up a reasonable amount of equity. And also now the people are along the ride with them. And that's the exciting part.
Are there certain types of companies that you look for, or certain types of startups?
I look for
that
all
align with
kinds.
you, or
No, I look for all kinds. I mean,
okay,
people will ask me, like, oh, are these all Christian
right,
companies? And I'm like, no. I mean, these are all. I just look for great founders who are doing great things that have great data. You can be a great person but not have a great company, and I'm not going to invest in that company. So I want to make sure that the numbers and the data and all the information, I have analysts that walk alongside me that ask all the really important, money, all the inner workings and the debt and
yeah,
all the things you have. I have analysts that come alongside me that really go hard there. But for me, it's more of like, it's a gut call. It's what I see. It's what I'm listening to. Like if a founder is not humble, I don't want any part of him, because, you know, you can have a level of confidence. I'll take that, but arrogance and pride, you're gonna make bad decisions. You're probably gonna lose my money. And you're gonna lose the
yeah.
money of anybody else invested. So like I really am strategic on trying to find great founders.
Was this the jump that you made? Jump into this, or was that
Oh man, it
something
was
else?
one of them. I mean, so I was a pastor for a really long time. So I was a pastor for 10 years. And while I was a pastor, I was
From
like,
road
okay,
rules to pastor.
it really was. Yeah. In the middle of it, man, I was a yo-yo guy that went around the world doing yo-yo performances at schools for kids. I'm telling you, man, I've lived a Forrest Gump type life. So I was a pastor. And while I was a pastor, I was like, man, I don't make a lot of money. Pastors don't make a lot of money. And which is fine. I'm not saying pastors need to make a lot of money. So I was like, okay, what can I do? And this was 2014, 2015. And I decided to start an Amazon business on the side at night. And I had tried to start a bunch of things. I was a serial starter. I'm sure a lot of people listening are probably serial starters as well.
Yeah.
But I wasn't great at finishing. And so this time I decided, like, I'm going to finish this. And the reason I picked Amazon is because as a pastor, people get a little weird when your pastor's got another job. Like if he's power washing the neighbor's house next to you, he's like, why are you doing that? It's like,
Right.
so I decided to pick Amazon because the only place, like when you go buy an oven mitt off of Amazon, you have no clue who owns it. You just go, cool, it has 5 stars and it's cute. Great. I'm going to go buy that. So I decided I'm going to start Amazon because the only place my name was on the owner's document and the bank statements. And so I jumped out and I did it, and it was really successful. And I wrestled with, I was like, okay, now I got this full-time job, but I've also got this like Amazon thing that's like taken off. It's my first taste of success. And I was like, okay, like it gave me the confidence to go, okay, I can do this. I don't know if this is what I'm going to continue to do, but I had all kind of plans. I wanted to podcast. I wanted to write. I wanted to speak. I wanted to host, like you talked about with Carson Daly. I wanted to try my hand, but I knew I was 27 years old, or I was 37 years old. And I knew like the window is closing. Like the window of like, hey, you can do this, jump out. And like, like I didn't have kids in college yet. I didn't have like, so it was like, if you're going to make a move like this, you got to do it. And I had gained enough confidence, and my wife had gained enough confidence through the success we had in Amazon. That was like, okay, let's do this. And so I jumped out, met some guys that had like an online education thing. I started teaching people how to do Amazon, Shopify, but that was right when YouTube was starting to kind of really blow up, and people were just posting free stuff online. So it was like, oh, well, it's like, you want to learn how to do Amazon, like someone can just show you for free. No one's going to pay for a course. And so these guys that were mentors of mine were already doing angel investing. They're like, hey, there's some new laws that just opened up. Like, we think there's something here. And I was like, okay. And so I just dove in. I was like, now I was an entrepreneur myself. I understood business, I understood all that or whatever. But with their mentorship, they're like, well, we're investing in startups. I was like, okay, well, teach me. And then I kind of, next thing you know, kind of those guys were doing some other stuff, and I just kind of learned everything I could and went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And next thing you know, I'm one of the leading experts in the world of equity crowdfunding.
It's awesome. It's like that confidence that your 5-foot tall mom instilled in you is like served some purposes along the way.
Yeah,
maybe,
sure.
Got you in some maybe little trouble early on, but
tons, but
yeah. It's good though. I think
for sure.
That's something I just think of my own young version of myself. And I think my dad probably tried to instill confidence in me, but there was so much fear because of my own trauma
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to leave me if I wasn't perfect and those kind of things. And I'm like, oh, man, what if I had someone that had instilled all the, what would I have done and not waited until I was 30 to be like, who cares? Let's do whatever we want, like move into that space. I love that you took the leap. It sounds like it was an educated leap. It wasn't like quit everything and run to the mountains and do whatever, but you kind of proved it along the way and then took your chances.
It was a little, it was a little less educated than it probably should have been. I ultimately think about it. I'm like, if there ever comes a day or a season where I go, okay, let me teach folks how to do this. Like, how do you do this? Like, if I was going to go back and go, okay, 5 kids, full-time job, would I have done it the way I did it? Probably not. But it doesn't. You don't know, right? You don't know until you do it. And I'm like, okay, I think I could help people figure out how to take that jump now, and I could really map a course for them to go, like, this is the way, this is the path. This is what I would. So you do this, and then you do this, and you do this, and so. But for me, it's like sometimes you take kind of the semi dumb that doesn't understand what he's doing. It's like, and a wife who's trusting enough and faith in, obviously my God, that I'm like, okay, but also understand hard work, diligence, like sacrifice. You can't just go, oh, it's all just going to be handed to me. It's like, it comes down to a lot of hard work. And so I think
but
found
you had
a lot
proven,
of people,
you had proven time and time again for 37 years that you could try new things. You could learn from things that didn't work out, so
yeah.
I mean, from the outside perspective, it seems like you at least dipped your toe in the water to test things out to make sure that things were going to be like, okay, it wasn't like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I knew for me, I was like, okay, if I take this ride, it doesn't work. What am I going to do? I can go get a job. I can go get a job again. Like, it's like, okay. But I didn't ever want to live with, one of the things I often say is like, which what if are you willing to live with? Mm-hmm. So like, do you want to live with the what if I would have tried that someday and you never did it? Are you okay to live with that for the rest of your life? Or is it, what if I would have stayed in that job? Man, that would have been crazy. But now you're on the other side of it. You know which what if you want to live with.
And even if it didn't work out, now you know.
Oh yeah, I would have been like, sweet. I mean, I gave it a ride. I had a buddy of mine who he was kind of jumping around the same time out of his career, and he was in the corporate world, and he was like, and a little part of me grieved for him because he would go to the corporate world, make a ton of money, maybe get laid off, and it's like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur again. And he would try the entrepreneur thing. And then he came to me one day, he was like, man, he's like, I got to acknowledge something. I was like, what is it? He's like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I was like, what do you mean, man? And like, part of me was like, no, don't let the dream die or whatever. But he's like, I have to look at what people are paying me for. Like, people are paying me a lot of money, like significant hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this thing over here. And they keep doing it. So that tells me that's where my value is. And that's where they want me. And that's where the market's telling me they want me. And it's not an entrepreneurship because I can't get the thing off the ground. And I'm like, man, that's some self-awareness, right? But there was a piece of him that died a little bit that day. But he did also, there's a piece of him that found peace because he knew, okay, this is what I'm great at.
Right. Stop running away from it. Run towards it. Yeah.
For sure.
No, I mean, I love that you took this chance, and now because you took that chance, you're now able to serve people in a different way. You can serve fulfilling dreams for people. Yeah. In a different way. I'm sure I was saying that, and then I realized you were a pastor, so you were helping people in that way. But
sure,
now you're doing it in a different
environment, though. It was my job, right? It was, which was fine. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I mean, there was still some limitations to it for sure.
Yeah, and then I think of you saying, like you were that young kid who was afraid of being stuck in something, and now I'm like, are you okay being stuck in this world? Because every choice that you make is a little different, right? I imagine as an angel investor, the different companies you come across, the research you do it's different on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's, what's interesting is I think, one of the things I've learned is the more, because I'm like, I'm going to go be part of that conference over there, and I'm going to do this thing over here. We're going to write, it's like, man, like, okay, my wife and I are writing books, and we have a podcast, and I'm an angel investor, and I'm speaking at this
Right.
conference. You just go, okay. So my word this year is focus, and like really trying to lean in to go like, what if you just did stay in this lane? Like you're already doing some pretty amazing things in this lane.
Yeah.
But like, what if you just really stay? Like you just tightened it up even more, and where you're almost sticking yourself on purpose to get stuck. But you know what I'm saying? But the opportunity for growth and scale and impact even grows greater when your focus is 100% locked in on this thing over here. And so that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm focused on.
From this stranger's perspective, everything that you're doing is in service of helping others, whether that's the book, whether that's the podcast, whether that's the angel investing, whether that's just listening to your friends that give you a call.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if we're going to argue here, that sounds like a focus,
Let's do it.
Yeah. Little branches. No, I really appreciate you sharing this story. It's something that I know that a lot of listeners grapple with, if you will, and leaning into their faith, or leaning into their confidence, or leaning into their trust in themselves, or finding themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I know something you said is going to resonate with people, and I just appreciate you telling it in this weird way with my weird questions and those kind of things that come along with it.
No, man, this was great, and I love what's happening. And at the end of the day, my prayer and hope is that whoever's listening and whatever they got going on in their life, that they will find clarity, that they'll find hope, that they'll find peace, and that they'll be able to step into the calling that they were born to have. And that's the best when that happens, and that they can have it and share it with, I realize how blessed I am and how lucky I am to have my amazing wife of 20 years. She's my best friend. And I just know how blessed I am with that. And I don't take it for granted whatsoever. And, 5 healthy kids, and, it can be crazy at times, but like, I recognize that the life that I've been given is very special. And I try to steward it well and not blow it, So anyway, thanks for letting me come and share.
It sounds like you are. It sounds like not blowing it. It sounds like you are doing what your purpose is. And, the part that sticks out for me is that at a moment in which you could have gone down a worse road, you asked for help in the way that you knew how to do, and you knew what was important to you. If you could go back to that version of Chris, walk into that street corner, what would this version want to say to him?
I think what I would do is I'd probably just try and give him a hug. I'd just give him a hug and be like, hey man, like you don't have to perform anymore. Just relax. Like you are enough. And I don't know who you're trying to impress or why you're trying to do it, but it's not worth it. Man, I'd probably just give him a hug and be like, hey, relax. It's going to be okay. That's probably what I'd say to him.
Yeah. I think, you know what? It's so common, people saying that they would go back to that younger version of themselves and just give a hug and just give acknowledgement of love and that someone cares, and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's just like I don't think you realize.
But in the moment, it doesn't feel that way.
Oh, well, I think one of the things I've come to realize through the years and through a lot of personality performances and tests and stuff is that I naturally have a very high stress tolerance, which is not a good thing necessarily. It's okay to handle stress, but you don't realize how much, like, eventually you have to deal with the stress. And when you're younger and you're dealing with the stress, it's not a good thing. So I probably had more stress than I ever realized as a kid than I should have, because there's a lot of things I saw and experienced. So but
you did it.
That's where I'm at. Yeah,
you did it, and here you are, and you're changing lives. If people want to read your books, listen to your podcast, find you, connect with your newsletter, like be a part of your world, what's the best way to find you?
You can go to chrisgraebe.com. Graebe gives you some info, all the different things. But I've got the books, Rhythm of Us, Rhythm of Home. And then the podcast is called The Rhythm of Us as well. My wife and I do that. And then the angel investing stuff is called The Crowd, CRWD, no O, The Crowd, YouTube,
Awesome.
Anyway.
So you're basically everywhere.
I'm out
You're
there.
in
I know.
bookstores,
trying to focus. Trying to focus, but that's.
If you're in service to others, it's kind of, you got to be in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So
that's
good on you. Thank you for that. We will share all those links easily in the show notes so people can find whatever space that they want to find you in and connect with you and share how your story has impacted them. Hopefully they will reach out to you. Just thank you again for being a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you having me, and this has been fun.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening, thank you for listening. Share this episode with someone that you think might need to hear it. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.